Hello and welcome to the Inner Game of Entrepreneurship podcast. I'm your host, Sarah. And if you're watching this on the YouTube, you might notice that the second half of the video is a little funny. And it's because I was recording live in two places at once on Instagram and on Riverside. And at the end, the Riverside video broke. So the video that you're watching is, luckily I was recording also on Instagram or I would have lost this whole episode. But that's why the video changes as you progress into the episode. So sorry about that. Today, we are talking about the difference between capitalism and commerce, the difference between capitalism and money. This is something that's confusing for a lot of people. And sometimes I hear heart-centered service providers, spiritual practitioners, healers and helpers, artists, people with big gifts to share on the planet, rejecting money and rejecting wealth because they're worried about participating in capitalism. And for one thing, we can't not participate in capitalism if we live in a capitalist country. If you are paying rent and shopping at the grocery store and going to the movies and have streaming services, you're participating in capitalism. Money is moving in that system, whether you own the company that's bringing that money into your life or not. The money is going to get moved either way. But I also really want to break down how capitalism and commerce are different, and that owning a business doesn't inherently make you a capitalist, and how that all works. So this might feel a little bit like a departure from some of our usual episodes, but I think it's really important because this is a pushback that I hear from a lot of people, that I see all over the internet, where people are like afraid of wealth and rejecting of money because what they're really afraid of is causing harm. And that's really valid. And it's almost kind of Dunning-Krugerish. Like, if you are afraid of extracting from people and harming people, you can be pretty sure that you're not going to become a capitalist inherently, because what it means to be a capitalist is that you're not worried about those things. You actually want that. So I'm going to break it all down, and hopefully this is helpful for you and you enjoy it. And by the time this episode comes out, I have two things that are available. One is that I'm hosting an event called Scaling Simplified. If you have a six-figure business and you are trying to get to multi-six figures, $500K to $1 million in your business, and you are hitting the same revenue cap over and over again, and you can't figure out why, or you know that you want to scale, but you can't possibly work any more than you're working right now, and you can't figure out how to get there, you should come to this event. It is pay what you want. You could come for free. You can pay $1. You could pay me $100. You decide what it's worth to you. You throw whatever you want in, including nothing. I will not judge you. I'm going to deliver the same value either way. Get yourself signed up. The event is on May 12th, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Pacific time. If you can't come, there will be a replay. You can sign up at intuitiveedgecoaching.com/simplified to come to that. I'll put the link in the show notes. If you are not at six figures yet, you're just getting started and you want to get yourself to six-figure business, then the place for you is my new Six-Figure Business Accelerator program. That is starting the first week of May, and I only have 5 spots left. It is basically a year-long intensive business school. I'm going to teach you both the outer and inner game. I'm going to teach you how to get your business set up in an intentional, manageable, profitable, scalable way from the beginning, in a way that works for who you are, what you do, and your lifestyle. And then we're also going to be working on the inner game. How do you become the version of yourself that can run and lead and steward a successful business? So the website to sign yourself up for that is intuitiveedgecoaching.com/accelerator. Once those 5 spots are full, I will be just pulling the link down. So if you're hearing this and you're like, that's the place for me, I really want to get in the accelerator, go ahead and sign yourself up. If you have questions, you can email me, intuitiveedgecoaching@gmail.com. You can DM me at intuitiveedgecoaching on Instagram. You can send an owl to my house. You can do whatever feels appropriate to get your questions answered. I'm happy to answer all of them. So those are the two things that I have coming up that I would love to see you at. For the baddies who are already at 6 figures and looking to scale, come to Scaling Simplified on May 12th, intuitiveedgecoaching.com/simplified. For the baddies who are just getting started and want to hit that first 6 figures, sign yourself up for the Six-Figure Business Accelerator, intuitiveedgecoaching.com/accelerator. Without further ado, let's get into this wild and wacky and delightful episode. Here you go. we're going to talk about the difference between commerce and capitalism, because I'm seeing a lot of people be confusion. This all started because I was on Threads. I don't really understand Threads yet, so I have no business being over there. But I was over there and I saw someone ask a question to anti-capitalist business owners about their politics, and then some man in the comments was like, there's no such thing as an anti-capitalist business owner, because if you're a business owner, then you're inherently a capitalist. So you're just anti yourself. That doesn't make any sense. And I was like, hey, friend, just so you know, commerce and capitalism aren't the same thing. And as a business owner, you're not inherently a capitalist. And he was like, yes, you are. And if you make a profit in your business and then you like go on vacation, then that's capitalism. And he was just loud and wrong. And I get it. Like, English is really confusing, and there are words that mean different things. Like, the same word can mean different things, and it can be very confusing. And our schools are real, real bad. So I firmly believe that you should not have arguments in other people's comment sections. If you think that somebody is wrong, go talk about it on your own page and leave the nice person who made that post alone and out of it, because they don't need to be part of your argument with a stranger on the internet. Also, I don't believe that people are interested in having good faith conversations or learning in comment sections. They just want to yell and hear their own voice, and that's fine. I'm just not going to engage in that. But I also work with big-hearted artists, creatives, spiritual practitioners, healers, who are trapped in a grindcore system that is extracting all of their life force energy through their labor and keeping them trapped in subsistence-based poverty, aka they're in the grinding mechanism of capitalism in a way that is killing their spirit. And they are not fully employed in their gifts, skills, and talents. And they might want to be, but they're afraid that if they were to become wealthy, like if they were to become, say, a millionaire, or even 100,000aire, or make a lot of money using their gifts, skills, and talents, that they will inherently become bad people. Because we also get confused about whether or not money is capitalism. So we're going to talk about the differences between all these things. We're also going to talk about, like, spiritually what money is, and a little bit about the history of capitalism. I'm not an economist. I am an autistic business coach on the internet, fueled entirely by caffeine and the Aries stellium new moon rage of watching men be loud and wrong on the internet. So you don't have to listen to me about anything, but you might find some of this helpful, especially if you are the kind of person who has a gift, skill, and talent, and you want to make money, but you're worried that if you were to start a business and make a lot of money, that you would inherently become a bad person. So real quick, I just want to clear up what kind of spiritual entity and spiritual technology money is. People say money changes you. It does not. Money as a spiritual entity is not a transformation agent. It's an amplification agent. So money makes whatever is there bigger and more, or less and smaller. If you are an extractive, greedy, insecure, vindictive fuckface as a broke person, and you get money, you're going to be that on a grander scale. If you are a generous, kind-hearted, human-centered, earth-centered person with a heart for service, who wants to see people healed and happy and wants to see the planet healed and healthy, having money is going to make you able to be more of that on a grander scale. It does not transform one into the other. It can only amplify what's already there. So there is a chance that you might have been a greedy, vindictive, insecure fuckface masquerading as a kind, generous person until you got money. And then money allowed you to drop your mask, but it did not make you a different kind of person. It only ever amplifies what's already there. So let's clear that up. If you are afraid that money, having money, is going to make you a bad person, it's not. And I think it's really important to say this, because I firmly believe that there are only two kinds of people in the world. There are people who have been punched too much and people who haven't been punched enough. And you can tell who's who really fucking fast as soon as they start talking, right? And most of the people that I work with are people who have been punched too much. And one of the ways that you can tell that somebody has been punched too much is that they're really afraid of accidentally punching other people. They're really afraid of other people getting punched. They want to stop people from getting punched. They really, really care about punching. And they just really hope that nobody gets punched. So it makes sense that the big-hearted people, the artists, the creatives, the healers, the people who we actually need to have money in order to create the kind of change that we want to see in the world, are really afraid of having that money, because they're afraid that by having that money, they will accidentally replicate the systems of harm that have hurt them, their families, their lineages. That's not something you have to be afraid of, because capitalism isn't actually money. It's about how money is moved. Commerce is just the act of buying and selling. Commerce happens in any system. There's commerce in socialist countries. We had commerce before we had capitalism. Capitalism is an entire economic system where private individuals control the means of production for profit. So that's the textbook definition. And we can think that we understand what all those words mean, but sometimes we really don't. So if you own a small business where you are doing the work and somebody's giving you money for your work, you're participating in commerce. If you own a small business where you make jam and you sell that jam to your neighbor for a little bit more than what it costs you to make it, you're participating in commerce. You're not controlling entire systems of economic flow and extracting from others in order to privately benefit. So in this case, you're a business owner, but you're not a capitalist in the systemic sense. A capitalist in the systemic sense owns large-scale assets. They own factories, infrastructure, and they're amassing vast capital through extraction and then using that vast capital to sway public policy toward their benefits to allow them to concentrate more capital at the expense of humans and the planet, where they're going to profit from the labor of others at scale. So if that's not what you would do with money, you're probably safe, right? So again, a small business owner typically owns their own work. Maybe you hire a small team and you want to pay your team well and you're working in the business and your friends are working in your business and you're paying your friends. Still not capitalism. Capital, right? So let's talk about these words because capital means more than one thing. Capital, when we're talking about systemic capitalism, big picture, it's the ownership of large assets or again, means of production that generate wealth from the labor of others. So if I have the capital to buy a house, that just means I have personal financial resources. If I save up all the money in my piggy bank and I use it to buy a better camera, again, that's not me controlling the means of production. And it's still capital, right? It's my capital and I'm investing it, but it's not the same thing as systemic capitalism. So profit, similar. Profit in business just means whatever's left after expenses. But in capitalism, profit can mean the ongoing extraction of surplus from large-scale labor systems toward private ownership. So same words, but the scale and the context shift the meaning of the words. And this is really important. So in business, we want to make a profit. That just means I made more than I spent. That's required for my business to be healthy. I want to make more than I spend. But that doesn't mean, again, that I'm extracting wealth from others and hoarding it for private benefit. So then means of production. What does it mean when we say owns the means of production? We kind of vaguely get it, but let's really talk about that. So when a company owns the means of production, it controls the key tools and infrastructure needed to create goods and services. So you own the factory, the machinery, the supply chain, the patents, right? That's where we get into making patents and being this is mine and nobody else can make it. Even the distribution. This is what we get into this phrase, vertical integration. So you'll have one company that owns every single step from the raw materials to the final sale. And if they can dominate all those steps, they can make it really hard for other people to even enter the market. So part of the goal of a capitalist system is to lock competition out. The PR spin on capitalism is that capitalism is good because it encourages competition. But that's not really true because the genuine spirit of capitalism is tiny, frail, and egocentric. And it's about hoarding. It's resource hoarding. I don't want there to be competition. That's why they want to buy up all the other companies that do what they do and crush them because they don't want competition. They don't want there to be there's 10 different people who are knitting sweaters and selling all the beautiful sweaters that they're making at a marketplace. They want to own the knitting needles. They want to own the yarn. They want to own knitting. They want to patent all the patterns. They want to make it so that other people can't motherfucking knit. So if you're not going to do that, again, you're probably safe from whether or not you're going to become a systemic capitalist. Okay. So locking out competition is a big part of it because then when other people can't get materials and they can't get distribution, they can't compete on price because these other companies control all the margins. So they're blocked out from becoming big players. So that's what it means to say you own the means of production. Other people can't do this because you bought up all of the ways to make it happen. So they have to go through you. And then again, the word profit. Again, so in profit, small business is just making sure that you earn more than you spend. It's not about funneling money away from labor and into one person's pocket. It literally just means you make more than you spend, and that just means your business is working. So if your service costs you $100 to provide and you make $300, and then you take $100 of that and you use it for your daily expenses for food and for housing, and you take another $100 and it goes back into materials and costs because it costs you $100, and then $100 into your savings, that last bit is your profit. Now, if you take that profit and you use it for your life, like you take your kids on vacation, still doesn't make you a systemic capitalist. You're earning money from your own business activities. You're not exploiting people in order to control an entire market or large-scale labor. If you run a small business, you're basically making a living from your own work, from your own labor. You might even hire some people. You might hire your friends, and you're paying them really well. Still not a capitalist. So the way I think of it is this. If I have a farm and I grow food in my own yard, and I keep the food that me and my family need to eat, and I can some of that food and I save it for winter so that if we have a year that our farm doesn't produce, we're okay. And then whatever's left over, I sell to my neighbors, commerce. But if I save up my money and then I buy my neighbor's farm and I hire my neighbor to work for me on their own land at a lower wage, and then I take all the food that's grown on that farm and I sell it to a market, and I make my neighbor go buy that food back at a markup or they'll starve. And then I use the profits from that to buy up every farm in town and do the same thing. So no one in town owns their own farms anymore, and everyone has to work for me and give me all their fruits and veggies. And then I take the proceeds from that and I buy all the supermarkets. And then I raise the prices on all the fruit and veggies again. Then I buy the company that makes the baskets at the grocery store. And then I buy the company that makes the bags at the grocery store. So every single bit of it I profit off of, even though I'm not doing that work. That's capitalism. If I make my money in my business and I take my profits, the money I earn that's above the cost of running the business, and I use those profits to buy a better camera for my photography business, not capitalism. I'm engaging in commerce. I'm participating in the economy. I'm not a systemic capitalist. If I use that money and I take my kids on vacation, I'm still engaging in commerce and participating in the economy, not systemic capitalist. If I use that money and I divvy it all up to my team members and give them back all the money that they earned from their labor, or I take all the money that we earned in the business and we donate it to a land back fund, that's not capitalism. It's resource circulation, not systemic capitalism. If I take the money that is earned in my business and I divvy it up and give it to all my rich friends who have never been involved in the business, and then we together use our money to buy up all our neighbors' businesses and kick them out of the industry. And then we break up their companies and sell them to our other friends, and we fire all of their workers, and then we hire other people for cheaper, especially in another country. And then we make the products more expensive. And then we use the profits from that to do that all over again so that we collectively start to own more and more stuff and make it more and more impossible for anyone else to own anything. Now we're in capitalism territory. When the profits from a business are going to external shareholders, distant owners who didn't create the value themselves, that's where capitalism kicks in. So it's about ownership of assets that others work on and the profits flowing to those owners instead of the workers who produce the value. So if you're running a business and you're just paying yourself and your team, it's not the same thing. If the workers own the business and they share the profits, then the people creating the value are the ones benefiting. It's still commerce, but it flips the model. There's no outside owner extracting profit. So while it's still a business, it's not capitalist in structure. And this is why you can be a millionaire or have a business that makes $1 million or multiple millions of dollars and not have it be a capitalist business. You can have a $1 billion company that's not capitalist. It's possible. The largest worker-owned cooperative in the world is the Mondragon Corporation. It was founded in 1956 in Basque Country, Spain. The Mondragon Corporation employs over 70,000 worker owners across more than 80 autonomous cooperatives. So it's the world's biggest example of a large-scale, worker-owned, anti-capitalist business model. The Mondragon Corporation in 2024 earned 11.3 billion euros. That's circulated back to its workers. So it's a $1 billion company, but it's not a single billionaire owner with workers who aren't even made enough to have a living wage. right? That's the difference. So you can have a $1 billion anti-capitalist company. You absolutely can. Now, I don't believe that you can be an anti-capitalist billionaire, because I don't believe there's a way to be personally a billionaire without hoarding or extraction. Separate conversation. But you can have a $1 billion company that has an anti-capitalist business model, as long as you're circulating the profits back to the workers. So capitalist business example, giant clothing corporation. It owns factories. It hires workers at the lowest wages possible. It distributes the profit to shareholders who don't work there. The more the company squeezes the costs, cutting wages, having bad environmental habits and practices, using cheaper materials, the more profits flow up to those owners. So their goal is to get profit for people who don't work there at the expense of the bodies of the people who work there and at the expense of the planet. That's a capitalist business model. An anti-capitalist business example would be a worker-owned bakery like Arizmendi, which I think was actually named for the guy who started the Mondragon Corporation, or the Cheese Board in the Bay Area, which is where I'm from. Those are worker-owned cooperative bakeries. The bakers collectively own the company. They all vote together on wages and share the profits equally. They decide together what is going to happen in the company. So if the business grows, the workers still own it. There are no outside investors taking a cut. It's just the people doing the work benefiting. So that is an anti-capitalist business model. So how did we get to this point that we're at today in the United States, where we have this like rampant capitalism that's destroying society, where people are like afraid? I'm going to say dragons. Hang with me. Hear me out. So the capitalism we currently have grew out of industrialization. I am the daughter of a historian. We're going to take this quick history lesson. I'm going to try to make it fun. It's not drunk history, but it's something. So late 19th, early 20th centuries, massive industrial growth allowed powerful business owners to buy up factories and railroads and supply chains, right? Robber barons, the Carnegies, the Rockefellers, those people. These people, these types of people, we also have them now, the Musks, the Kochs of the world. I believe they are the incarnated spirits of dragons. People are like, where did dragons go? How come we don't have dragons? We do. Who sits on a pile of gold that they are not using and wants to kill anybody for getting close to it? And they want to go around and just like breathe fire on everybody and take all of their trinkets and treasures and hoard them all for themselves? Dragons. We have dragons. They just look like men in top hats in the 19th century, and they look like men trying to build rockets now. So back in the day, the Rockefeller dragons, the Carnegie dragons, they start a business. So they have some land, they buy some land, which that's also stupid. You shouldn't be able to buy land, but that's a whole separate conversation. They have this land. They find out the land has oil. They start selling the oil. But then instead of keeping that money or using that money to help their family, their community, their friends, they don't like funnel it back into their town. They don't use it to like start an art museum or whatever. Well, that's a problem too. Anyway, they just use it to buy more wells. Then they use it to buy trains to move the oil. And then they use it to buy refineries that make gasoline. So the more stuff they buy, the more control they have. So eventually they own almost every step. They're digging the oil, they're transporting the oil, they're refining the oil, they're selling the oil. Then they're going to buy car companies, right? They're trying to get their claws in all the gold. So that means other people can't really start an oil business because Rockefeller now owns the whole chain. Right? Carnegie, steel, right? So we're trying to own up all of the ability to build buildings so that other people can't have a big company. We've got to have all the gold. So as they're doing this, they're not stopping with oil. They're doing it with steel. They're doing it with railroads. They're doing it with other industries. The more pieces they own, the harder it is for anyone to compete, because remember, the spirit of this is inherently insecure. It is small. I'm afraid. There's not enough. It's inherently rooted in scarcity. It's all white supremacist, right? And it's all patriarchal, rooted in scarcity. The idea that there is a zero-sum game of abundance on the planet, and that if some people own some stuff, then there's less for me to own. So I have to own all the stuff. They're manifest destinying all of the stuff. They say, like, what I have to manifest is all the destiny. I need all the destinies. And my God says, because I'm a white man, I'm more entitled to the destinies than other people. So I got to manifest all the destinies for me. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So nobody can compete with me. If you have a little bit of money, then I have less money, and I can't have that because I'm a dragon and I need all the gold. I got to sleep on it. It makes me feel whole. So that's how these few families start ending up controlling entire industry. So then when they're controlling every step, like they've got the mines and the factories and the stores, then they can decide the prices, and they can decide who gets to buy the materials. They can decide who gets to compete. And that's why they tell the story that like capitalism is all about competition. We want competition. Competition is good. They don't want that. They want you to start a business, do a bunch of work so that they can buy you out and break you down. That's what owning the means of production means. Own all the tools and all the steps needed to make and sell the things. And when a few people control all that, then they shape the whole market. So then since they owned all the steps, they get to decide, what am I going to pay the workers? If you need a job now, you have to work for me because I own all the factories in this town. I'm setting all the wages. So then the industrialists are like, well, we want more profits, right? We need all the gold. So I'm going to pay you as little as possible. And I'm going to make the conditions super unsafe. And then if you die, I don't care because we don't care about humans and we don't care about the earth. All we care about is profit. Dragons. So it's this conscious decision to prioritize their personal wealth and power, even if it means other people struggle to live. This is an unsustainable system. Capitalism, again, inherently extractive. So this is what ended up driving workers to organize. This is where we have the beginning of labor unions because the workers are like, hey, this isn't cool. We're dying and we're not making enough money and we're hungry. And these people are intentionally robbing us. So we're going to fight them. The workers get upset with low pay and the harsh condition. They form labor unions. They start fighting. You know what those capitalists did? They killed those people. They had them shot. They fought with them. They said, no, you're trying to come take our gold, right? So anytime there's worker pushback, people asking for better pay, safer conditions, fairer treatment, they were not trying to have all that shit. Worker struggles eventually are why we have minimum wages, safer workspaces. But at the beginning, the robber barons were like, we're not having that. We want profits for a few at the expense of the many. So this basically went on until it created the conditions for the Great Depression. I'm not really going to get into the stock market stuff because that's like way more complicated. But essentially, the industrialists built the monopolies. The Rockefellers had their oil. The Carnegies had their steel. They're controlling entire industries. They're keeping the wages low. They're crushing the competition. They're piling up their wealth. Big drag. We have all the shit. Their unchecked power fuels the speculation of the Roaring '20s. So like regular people start buying stocks in companies, but they're borrowing money from banks to buy stocks. And the banks are like, okay, do what you want, do your thing. But then people are like, wait a minute, I think these stock prices don't make any sense because the value of the company doesn't match the stock price. I'm going to sell my stocks. And then other people are like, oh, should I sell my stocks? They all sell the stocks. The banks can't give them the money back. They're like, you have to pay back what you borrowed. People are like, I can't. Banks are like, run it. Whole thing collapses. All bad. All right. So stock market collapse. People saw concentrated power as part of the problem, right? So FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, sweeps up and he goes, we need socialism to bail out capitalism because capitalism fucked everything up. This is not working. So then he creates the New Deal, okay? New Deal, I'm stopping all this shit. So he makes laws that break up the monopolies, right? He makes the antitrust acts to give the workers rights, like the right to unionize, the right to a minimum wage. All these steps were meant to curb the extreme power that these robber barons had built. So the New Deal established things like the Glass-Steagall Act to separate commercial and investment banking, created Securities and Exchange Commission to regulate Wall Street. Before that, it was Wild West out there. Passed the Wagner Act protecting workers' right to unionize. Funded programs like the Works Progress Administration. It's creating jobs. The Environmental Protection Agency, Social Security shows up now. We have retirement income. It creates the FDIC, Federal Insurance Corporation, to protect people's bank deposits, ensuring that people feel confident in the bank. So now we're taking our money out the mattress, we put it back in the bank. So FDR comes in and says, we're going to use socialism, right? Public safety nets to break up some of the monopolistic practices through antitrust enforcement. Tennessee Valley Authority builds infrastructure like dams, electricity, and jobs. So it's this multifaceted, essentially socialistic intervention to stabilize the economy. The state is going to take some of the money from taxes and it's going to give it back to us in terms of social programs, social safety nets. So that's just one of the times that socialism had to come in and save capitalism because capitalism broke everything. So then we've got a regulated bank, a regulated market, reduced catastrophic risk, labor rights and union protections, helping workers bargain for more fair wages, social safety nets like Social Security. People have more security. People feel safer with banks, more balanced economy. The workers start earning more. Corporations are less able to dominate. There was rules for dragons. Okay, you guys can exist, but like you can't go out and just blow the fire on everybody all the time. You got to just chill with the gold you've got. So people have more money to spend. So now we've got decades of growth. So we have safer, stable, expanding middle class until Reagan, right? In the 80s, Reagan goes, let's deregulate all the shit. Let's take all those protections away. So this meant big companies could expand more easily and consolidate power again. So the kind of PR spin on that is that Reagan's like, oh, if we reduce government oversight, it's going to boost economic growth. It'll be even better, right? Trickle down economics. This isn't true. Again, like the idea that capitalism likes competition. It's not true. It's not true that he thought that if businesses had fewer rules, they'd invest more and create more jobs and grow faster. This was all the dragons getting together and having a dragon council and saying, we've had enough of the regulations. Let us rape and pillage and loot again. Backdoor dealings. They were like, yes, the greed is good. We're down with the greed. So the large scale corporations, those wealthy investors, the people who benefit most, they all go, hey, like, wouldn't it be cool if we all let our club do whatever we want and have no rules again? So he says, yes, let's do that. Go ahead, merge with others, get bigger, higher profits, do all the things. So all these large business owners and corporations start using their money to lobby politicians. And this is where we get into the point that capitalism and democracy cannot coexist. So these individual robber barons using their money to buy politicians, to lobby. So they're hoarding all the resources, extracting all the profits, and then taking that money and spending it on lobbyists to get laws created that work in their favor, that allow them to extract more, that allow them to destroy the planet more, that allow them to create more corruption. They're going to advocate for laws that lower their taxes, that reduce their regulations, that give them loopholes. Industries like oil, pharmaceuticals, tech, they are particularly invested in shaping laws that allow them to grow bigger at the expense of everyone else. This, again, the spirit of dragon. That's where the dragons are. Someone like Charles Koch, billionaire industrialist, extract all the profits from the bodies of my laborers, spend millions of dollars lobbying for lower corporate taxes and fewer environmental regulations because I'm going to go to Mars or like be cryogenically frozen or whatever the fuck it is that they believe is going to allow them to live on this planet when it's all money and no humans left or whatever the fuck. So lobbying, it just means you're paying for people to talk to politicians for you and write laws in your favor. So the Koch-funded groups, they write actual bills, cutting environmental regulations and handing them to lawmakers to pass. And then if the lawmakers are like, hey, no, I'm not going to do that, those people get killed, right? That's how that works. Or they just are not in politics anymore. The people with all the money are saying, hey, we're going to go find somebody. We're going to buy somebody who's going to work in our interest. So if you're not, we're going to go find somebody who will. We're going to put all the money into their next campaign and they're going to beat you because they're going to get more advertising. So they're going to they're going to donate funds to the people who say no's opponents. It's basically a threat. If you don't do what we want, we are going to replace you. So that's how we got to where we are now, right? That's how we got to a place where basically everyone in the government works for a major corporation on the behalf of the corporations for the most part. Because if you don't do what those corporations want, if you don't succumb to the pressure of their lobbyists, you're not going to have a job or you're going to get unalived. This is why capitalism and democracy cannot coexist, because at a certain point, if they're on a track, capitalism will always overtake democracy. If democracy is one person, one vote, and everyone gets an equal say, but then some people can amass enough money to buy voting power, then democracy will always topple. Capitalism will always overtake democracy, which is why we've had to have times where socialism has to be brought in to save, quote unquote, save democracy. And now we're at this tipping point where this is why everyone's so disenfranchised and doesn't think that voting helps, because who are we voting to? What are we voting for? When the people who are making the bills that we get to vote on are all fundamentally rooted in extraction, right? So I know this was a ride, but back to my original point. When you run your own business, you're working to make a healthy, safe life for yourself and to create a good life for your team, to create a good life for your people, to buy a house, to retire with dignity, to take money and funnel it into the unhoused population, take money and funnel it into trying to to try and give money to single mothers, to try to fund education initiatives, to try to grow gardens in your community, to go to land back initiatives, to take care of your community. That's not capitalism. That's commerce. Capitalism is essentially about extraction. It's about taking as much as possible, giving as little as possible back until everything is ashes in your wake. It is essentially a nihilistic system. Capitalism is a death cult. Anti-capitalism is essentially about regeneration. It's about a system that gives more than it takes. It's about taking what you need and giving back in a way that makes everything more abundant than when you found it. It is essentially life giving and life affirming. So if you listen to all that stuff about the robber barons and the lobbyists, and you're like, well, my goal isn't to make money at the expense of the people who work with me and for me so that I can take money out of my community and use it to destroy the planet and to destroy people's lives, then you don't have to be worried that if you make more money, you're going to become an evil person. You can just set that fear to rest. If you listen to that and go, I would never do that. This is so disgusting to me. There's no chance that I would ever do that. If you already have it earmarked in your mind and your heart, what you would do with $1 million, and a lot of that, what you would do is about helping people, then you don't have to be worried that you're a dragon. You're not. You're fine. You're safe. And not only that, we actually desperately need you to make money. We need money being moved away from the dragon spirits. We need money moved away from the death cult and moved into systems, places, people who are going to try to use that money to create good, who are going to use that money for regenerative purposes. This is inherently a feminist economy. An anti-capitalist economy is inherently a matriarchal economy. It's about taking money and moving it into communities of care. It is about cooperation over competition. It is about sustainability and regeneration and not extraction, right? It is a completely alternative model for how to move money. It's moving away from individualism and toward community. It's a completely different model for how we move money. I want to just break down the proposal for the feminine economy, which was created by sister.is. And I think that this is really important to understand. I did not write this, but it is one of the primary principal documents that I used when I was founding my business. And it is one of the things that really helped me heal my relationship with money and my ideas about wealth so that I could start to grow my business. All right. So the masculine economy, American capitalism. Let's break it down. Scarcity consciousness. Again, I have to have all the stuff. Perpetual consumption. This idea that Earth is not a finite resource and that everything is disposable and we can just consume. Ego. The myth of meritocracy. It's okay for me to have all this stuff because I earned it on my own, not because I'm exploiting people. The worship of profit. The vilification of poverty. The domination of people and nature, materialism, private ownership, inequitable distribution of wealth, hierarchy, ends justifying the means, stoicism, non-accountability, speed and efficiency, competition, individualism, and linear growth. This is the masculine economy. This is American capitalism. This is all of the stuff that I just explained. There's an entirely alternate economy, and this is what the people that I am working with are trying to build. The feminine economy. Abundance consciousness, resourcefulness, mindfulness, gratitude, integrity, honesty, connection with nature, empathy, care, asking questions, sustainability, intimacy, embodiment, generosity, ease, collaboration, interdependence, and cyclical growth. These are direct corollaries. So where in American capitalism, we have scarcity consciousness, abundance consciousness. I don't need to destroy all the competition because there's enough for everybody. And I want everybody to have enough. Perpetual consumption replaced by resourcefulness. I want to be resourceful. The resources on the planet are finite, and I don't want to consume them endlessly until there's nothing left. I want to use them mindfully, and I want to create more resource. In the place of ego over everything, we have mindfulness. In the place of the myth of meritocracy, we have gratitude. In the place of profit worship, we have integrity. In the case of vilification of poverty, we have sustainability. So we are in the place of domination over people and nature. We have connecting with nature. In the place of materialism, we have empathy. In the place of ownership, we have care, right? So we are taking this old system. We still are using money. We're still using commerce, but where we're moving it and how we're moving it is entirely different. So participation in commerce does not inherently make you a capitalist. Money is not inherently evil, and having it isn't going to turn you into a dragon. You don't have to be afraid of that. If you weren't a dragon to start with, you're not going to grow up to be a dragon. If you were a baby sheep when you were born, you're going to grow up to be a big sheep, not a dragon. Don't be scared. Okay, I know that this was a ride, but I hope that it was helpful. Capitalism in a big systemic sense is when you're controlling large-scale systems where you profit by owning the whole machine and other people are doing the labor. So unless you're going to buy up all the industries, you're not that. You just focus on your business, not controlling everyone else's, and you'll be fine. So the moral of the story is As long as you're minding the business that pays you, you're going to be all right. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Love you. Bye.
That's our episode for today. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this. I know there are so many things that you could be doing with your day, so many things you could be listening to, and it means so much that you are here in this community. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment, share it on social media, and tag me at Intuitive Edge Coaching. Share it with a biz bestie who you think needs to hear it and will appreciate it. And take a moment to to subscribe, and to leave a 5-star review wherever you are listening. It helps me grow this show, and it helps us grow and sustain this brilliant community of entrepreneurs dedicated to doing the inner work. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, love you. Bye.